It's completely normal as people and as writers to assume that others think the way we do, that their brains work in the way that ours work, that they see what we see and they understand things the way that we understand them. But you and I both know this isn't true in life, and it's not true in writing either. When we're using text evidence in our writing, we can't just make the assumption that our reader understands that text evidence in the same way that we understand it. We have to do a little bit more. We have to unpack it for our reader. We have to tell them explicitly what it is that we see and what they should be seeing too. So today's move is discussing text evidence. Let's start with an example from Mimi Wong, writing about Ishiguro's novel Never Let Me Go for Electric Lit. The question of humanness troubles the clones, as well as sympathetic individuals like the Guardians. On Hailsham's mission, one of the Guardians, Miss Emily, proclaims, most importantly, we demonstrated to the world that if students were reared in humane, cultivated environments, it was possible for them to grow to be as sensitive and intelligent as any ordinary human being. So this is what I see with a lot of student writing. The student has an idea about the text and finds some text evidence that backs it up, and then mic drop. They just kind of leave it hanging there on a cliffhanger. Even as I read that to you, I hope that you felt a little bit unsatisfied, like that wasn't a complete thought, like you weren't quite sure what that quote meant or what that text evidence was supposed to be showing. Exactly. And that's because this is lacking discussion of the text evidence. Here's what Mimi Wong actually wrote. After that quote from Miss Emily, Mimi writes, the liberal-minded guardians invested in the students' cultural education not only with the aim of improving their quality of living, but also to establish that their lives were worth saving. Working against the rationalization of science, the guardians look to the students' creativity as the truer measure of their being human. Here's what I notice when I look at this discussion of the evidence. Mimi Wong does not just summarize what Miss Emily says. She doesn't paraphrase it. She doesn't say it again, but in different words, which is another thing that students often do when they aren't sure how to discuss text evidence. Instead, what she does is she says, here's what I see in this evidence. Here's what this really means. Here's what this text evidence implies. She's able to show us what she sees in the text by discussing it in this way. Her writing also shows us this kind of classic structure that works so well in analytical writing. Her paragraph begins with her original idea or observation about the text. She follows it with some text evidence, which can be a direct quote, but it could also be a paraphrase of the text, like we talk about in another video. And then we see her discussion. Now check out the proportions here. She has all three parts. Her original idea is very small. Her text evidence kind of takes up like a medium chunk of this paragraph. But the biggest chunk of this paragraph is her discussion of the evidence, what she sees in it, what it means to her, what it implies about the story. Here's another example from Anna Scheffer. And again, look, these proportions are even more dramatic. Yes, she has an idea. Yes, she has text evidence, but most of it is her telling us what it is exactly that she sees in this text evidence. This piece I'm not going to read to you. You can read it on the screen. This is about The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. But once again, after the text evidence, which is a direct quote here, Anna Scheffer does not paraphrase that quote. She doesn't just say it again. Instead, she kind of whispers to us, here's what this really means. Here's what this really shows. Here's what you should see and understand after you read this text evidence yourself. I want to show you an example that does not come from the world of literary analysis, because regardless of the kind of text you're analyzing and the kind of evidence that you are using, the structure and the ideas and the discussion remains the same. So this is from a piece about House of the Dragons, an HBO show. Again, it starts with an idea that these two characters suddenly lose control of a situation. We have evidence, and this time the evidence is longer. It's paraphrased, and there's a lot more of it. But then I want us to look at this discussion. The full ramifications of the attack won't be known until House of the Dragon's second season, but the implication is clear. After resisting the urge to go to war against the Hightowers, Rhaenyra will want to avenge her son's death. So the writer does not summarize what happened in the scene one more time. Instead, Miles Surrey tells us, listen, we don't even know all the facts yet, but here's what this text evidence implies. Here's what we can guess. Here's the reasonable inference that we can make after looking at this text evidence. One more example to show you a different way of doing it. There are a couple of things I want us to pay attention to here. This is a piece of sports analysis, also from The Ringer. First of all, it shows us that our discussion of text evidence can come before or after the evidence itself. More and more, I see professional writers putting their discussion right before the evidence. They say, here's what you should notice, here's what you should see, here's what this means. Now you can go look at it for yourself. It works both ways. It's a choice that you get to make as a writer. Do you want to discuss your evidence before you present it, kind of as a ta-da to the evidence? Or do you want to present your discussion after the evidence? They've looked at the evidence themselves. Now you're going to tell them what you see in it. It still begins with an idea. And I wanted you to notice this evidence. It's a clip. It's a video, right? Text evidence doesn't have to be just direct quotes from the text. It can be a song clip. It can be a paraphrase. It can be an image. It can even be a little bit of a video. It still works the same way. Idea, discussion, evidence. We have to have all three parts. So here are some supports to help you as you're discussing text evidence. After you've presented your evidence, ask yourself, what do you see when you look at the text evidence? What does this evidence bring to mind for you? What does it make you think about with regard to the text? What does the evidence imply to you? Now, to get started, you could even use some of these sentence starters to help you. You might say, here I see, or this makes me think, or I notice, or this shows, or this implies. It's totally okay to use these supports to get started if you aren't quite sure how to segue between evidence and discussion of that evidence. Try to start with one of these, and then over time, as you're feeling a little bit more confident, just erase that sentence starter part. Just erase, here I see, and make your bold, firm statement. Erase, this implies, and make your statement about what it implies. It's okay to use a little bit of a scaffold to get yourself going, but then you want to challenge yourself to take those scaffolds away so that you are discussing text evidence just like the pros. So where in your writing have you given an idea and presented some evidence, but you haven't yet discussed what that evidence shows or means or hints at or implies? Where have you given a paraphrase of some text evidence instead of a discussion of the text evidence? Where do you need to go back and add more about what you see when you look at that text evidence and what you want your reader to see when they look at it? What should they understand after they read it?